Sophie is an art student. She's painting something really curious. It's a greenhouse, but there's a white house inside the greenhouse, and a red house inside the white house. And there are lots of cubs inside the red house. Can you guess what exactly Sophie is painting? She's painting a watermelon. It has a small white layer inside the green one. Also, its pulp is red and full of seeds. Sophie is walking down the school hallway and meets her best friend Paul. There's a huge stain of red paint on his stomach. Sophie asks him, "Paul, what happened here?" Paul replies, "I was walking to the classroom, but suddenly some mad students sneaked up behind me and splattered paint all over my back. And then he just teleported like a superhero." Sophie says, "Stop fooling around," and leaves. Why? Alex has a stain on his stomach, not his back. Therefore, it's a fake story. Sophie and her classmates are drawing a still life, but one of the students is an imposter. Can you guess who? This guy's work is nothing like what others are drawing, but it's not a crime. But this lady over here has a police badge in her pocket, which means she's probably working undercover. Sophie enters an auditorium. 3 of her 3 classmates are very busy. Julia is standing on a ladder and hanging pictures. Paul is carving a sculpture from marble. And Nina is filming Paul. Which one is in greater danger? Nina, the sculpture is cracked and it's about to fall on her. Sophie and Paul are making an experiment after classes. Both guys bring identical buckets with the same amount of water. But the temperature of Sophie's water is 25 degrees C, and the temperature of Paul's water is 25 degrees F. Simultaneously, they drop a coin into each bucket from the same height. The coins hit the water at exactly the same time. Can you guess which coin should touch the bottom first? The coin in Sophie's bucket. At 25 degrees C, water is liquid, while at 25 degrees F, it turns into ice. Sophie is walking down the pier. She spots a cute boat and decides to paint it. She asks the 2 guys standing nearby, "Who's the owner of this boat? Can I paint it?" Both guys like Sophie and want to impress her. So they both shout, "This is my boat." Can you help Sophie figure out the real owner? There's a blue jacket on the chair in the boat that matches the pants of the guy on the left. So, he's the owner. Sophie has painted a beautiful picture, and the boat owner wants to buy it. He gives her a box with gemstones. All but 2 are blue, all but 2 are green, and all but 2 are red. How many gemstones are in the box? He gave Sophie a total of 3 gemstones, 1 blue, 1 green, and 1 red. Sophie visits Paul's house, and he offers her an apple that seems very delicious. She can't resist, but after taking a bite, Sophie finds a worm in the apple. Paul apologizes, but Sophie says, "Don't worry, it could be even worse." Can you guess what could be worse? Sophie could have found a half of worm. The next morning, Sophie enters the classroom. She sees Nina claiming that she had painted this portrait. Sophie gets furious and says, "You're a liar! It's my work!" Can you spot the real author? Nina signed this work in the right upper corner, but take a closer look at the lower left corner. We can still see the name Sophie under a layer of fresh paint. Therefore, Sophie painted this portrait. Sophie brings some of her recent works to an art gallery hoping to sell them. The dealer says, "Sorry, but we only sell antique drawings. They should be at least 300 years old." Sophie says, "Liar," and leaves. Can you guess why? Take a look at this painting. This elegant medieval lady has a sports car parked in her backyard. Sophie's brother Mike lives in the country with his wife. Sophie wants to visit them next weekend, but this week, Mike's wife is feeling very sick. Mike calls Sophie and says, "Sorry, we can't host you. My wife is sick. She might have appendicitis." Sophie replies, "This can't be true. I took your wife to the hospital 2 years ago myself, and she had her appendix removed." When diagnosed, Mike's wife was found to have appendicitis. Can you explain this mystery? It's possible because Mike had remarried and forgot to tell Sophie. Sophie is heading to the classroom and finds her art teacher, Mr. Wolf, unconscious on the floor. She takes him to the hospital. According to doctors, he has a severe allergic reaction. But Mr. Wolf insists that he hadn't eaten anything all day. Sophie interrogates everyone who was around Mr. Wolf that day. The cleaning lady says, "I wash the class in the morning. I only use organic and allergy-friendly products." Nina says, "I was painting vases in the classroom all day. Mr. Wolf was there too, but I didn't see him eating any food." And Paul says, "I saw Mr. Wolf in the library early in the morning. He was looking perfectly fine." Can you guess who caused Mr. Wolf's allergy? The cleaning lady. Although she used allergy-friendly products, she put the pencils in a jar with paint remover while cleaning his desk. Later that day, Mr. Wolf took one of these toxic pencils, chewed it, and got sick. Sophie returns back to the art school to prepare an exhibition. She's standing at the center of a ladder, preparing to hang a poster on the wall. She climbs up 6 steps, but suddenly the ladder begins to stagger, forcing her to come down 10 steps. Sophie asks Paul to hold the ladder and climbs 18 steps to the very top. Can you count the total number of steps on this ladder? Let's say that the middle step number is x. From the middle step, Sophie goes up 6 steps, which is x plus 6. Then she goes down 10 steps, and she's now at x minus 4. After that, Sophie goes up 18 steps, so she's now at x plus 14, or at the very top of the ladder. 14 steps from the top, plus 14 steps from the bottom, plus the middle step, and we get 29 steps. The art exhibition is going well. Hundreds of people came over to see it. Suddenly, someone cuts the power for a moment, and when it's back again, Sophie sees that the most expensive sculpture is missing. Can you help her find the thief? This elegant lady on the left. Her bag is looking full now, and it's hanging on the opposite shoulder. 3 art dealers approach Sophie during the exhibition to offer collaboration. Isabella shows her a picture of a beautiful villa on her phone and says, "Young lady, you must come to my art residence in Italy this summer. I'm ready to cover all your expenses." Sebastian says, "Darling, I'd love to buy 2 of your paintings for my private collection. Do you accept checks?" And Tina says, "I have a new book coming out this fall. Would you like to draw illustrations?" Only one of these deals is not fake. Can you help Sophie figure out which one? There are Hollywood Hills in the background of this villa, so it's definitely not in Italy. Therefore, Isabella is a liar. Sebastian acts like he's wealthy, but at the same time, he's trying to steal Tina's phone, so he's probably a scammer. Therefore, Sophie should accept Tina's offer. Sophie gets her first salary and goes to the jewelry shop to treat herself. The shop owner, Maya, complains, "There were several thefts in my shop this week." Sophie offers to help find the thief. First of all, she watches security camera videos. Very soon, she spots who is stealing the jewelry. Can you see him? Or her too? This lady is hiding the jewelry in her umbrella.
Sarah was in her hotel room when she heard a knock on the door. When she looked through the peephole, she saw a man standing outside. "Sorry for bothering you. I'm the hotel manager," he said. "Our database has crashed, and I need to recheck some information." Sarah said she would be back in a moment, got away from the door, and called the hotel security. She said there is a man trying to rob her. How did she know? Look at the man's name tag. It's a female name. He's not the real hotel manager. When Anna got to school, she noticed that her friend Joan was very upset. It was just the beginning of the day, but someone had already stolen her backpack. Joan left the classroom to go to the bathroom, and at that moment, someone must have got inside and stolen her things. Anna started her own investigation. Jenna from the robotics lab said she'd been fixing a robot that morning. Kate from the cheerleading squad had just begun her practice, and James said he'd spent 3 hours trying to solve a math problem and was now exhausted. Anna knew right away who had taken the backpack. Can you figure it out? It was James. The school day had just started. How could he have been there for 3 hours already? On a beautiful morning, Michael and Christina went on a hike. At some point, they saw a river they had to cross. Both of them needed to get to the other side. However, the boat could only make one trip back and forth and take one of them at a time. Still, both of them managed to get across. How? That's easy. They both went on a hike on the same day, but they weren't together, so they arrived at the river at the same time, but they were on the opposite banks. So after the boat took Christina to the other side of the river, Michael managed to get to the opposite bank too. At a party, there were 9 candies in a box. 9 people took 9 candies, but 1 candy was still in the box. How could that be possible? The last person took the candy that was still in the box. When the day after tomorrow becomes yesterday, then today will be as far from Sunday as the day it was today when the day before yesterday was tomorrow. Which day is it? It's Sunday. Look, the day after tomorrow becomes yesterday on Wednesday. The day before yesterday was tomorrow on Thursday. And Wednesday and Thursday are equally far from Sunday. Susanna was walking down the street when she saw a dog. It looked like the dog had just run away, so she picked it up and started searching for its owner. She walked into a co-working space. There were 3 people there. Susanna knew immediately who the owner was. How did she figure it out? Look at the guy in the middle. He's sitting on top of a dog leash. It was Brian's birthday, and he organized a game for his friends. He placed 2 cards, 1 yellow and 1 red, inside a box. The rule said that if a person picked the red card, they would win $7,000, but if they picked the yellow card, they would have to pay $700. Nobody knew that Brian had lied. He'd put 2 yellow cards inside the box instead of 1 red and 1 yellow. Brian's friend Sandra watched her friends lose the game one by one. But when it was Sandra's turn, she won $7,000. How? When it was her turn, she picked one of the yellow cards, not showing it to anyone. Then, she picked the remaining card, which was also yellow, and showed it to her friends. Brian had to admit that the first card she'd drawn and hidden was red. Otherwise, all his friends would know he was a liar. Way to go, Sandra. Amy has to escape from a high-security room, but to do so, she has to solve a riddle. There are 2 strings in the room, and the only information she has is that each string takes exactly 1 hour to burn. She needs to time exactly 45 minutes with the help of the strings. How can she do it? Amy should light both ends of the first string and one end of the second string. In 30 minutes, the first string will burn completely since it'll burn twice faster with both ends on fire. Then, she should light the second end of the second string. At that time, the second string will have 30 minutes left to burn. But by lighting its other end, Amy will make it burn in 15 minutes. Voila! 45 minutes measured. On January 1st, Devin called the police to report a crime. He said he'd gone to his neighbor's New Year's Eve party the night before. And while he was away, someone broke into his house and stole his laptop and other valuables. When the police asked about the party, Devin said it had been great. There was good food and string lights were shining brightly and beautifully. Devin added that his neighbor could have been the one to steal his things. Maybe he snuck inside the house when Devin was at his place, having fun. The police officer went to interrogate Devin's neighbor, Tom. But as soon as Tom opened the door, the officer knew he wasn't guilty. Devin was lying. How did he understand this? Look at the string lights on the tree. They're missing 3 bulbs. It means they couldn't be working the night before. Devin is lying. Matthew was on an expedition to the South Pole. He had been exploring the area for days when a storm began. Looking for shelter, he managed to find 2 caves. In the first cave, there was a very hungry-looking polar bear. In the second cave, the air was filled with toxic gas. Which cave should he choose? The first cave. Polar bears don't live at the South Pole. Jerry has an apple tree. The number of apples on his tree doubles every week. 30 weeks later, the tree is completely covered in fruit. Can you guess how many weeks the tree will need to become covered in oranges? Oranges don't grow on apple trees, but if I asked you about apples, the answer would be 29 weeks, because, as we know, the number of apples doubles every week. Nobody has ever walked this way. What way is it? The Milky Way. Dave was held in a 150-foot-high tower of an ancient castle. In his cell, there was nothing other than a pair of scissors and a 75-foot-long rope. Despite this, when the guards came to check on him the next morning, they saw he had managed to escape. How did he do it? He cut the rope in the middle, but rather than cutting it across, he cut it along. Then, he tied both pieces of the rope together and safely got down to the ground. Genius, huh? On the outskirts of the town, there was a haunted house. A group of friends decided to check it out. They went there at night, but as soon as they got there, one of the friends, John, refused to go inside and tried to stop the others. But they just laughed at him and went inside, leaving him behind. There were several terrible crashing sounds coming from the house. And then everything went still. John never saw his friends again. How did John understand that there was something seriously wrong with the house? John was very attentive. He noticed that there were lots of footprints leading towards the house, but none going away. Rachel was in her office when security called her, saying there was a robber in the building and he was trying to escape. She ran to the elevators to get outside. But 2 elevators arrived at the same time. In each of them, there was a man that looked suspicious and could be the robber. How can Rachel understand which elevator is safe to take? The one that's going up. If the robber is trying to get out of the building, his elevator will be going down. So Rachel should take the one going up. Carol was invited to a Halloween party in an abandoned house. Her friends asked if she was up for a challenge, and she said yes. Soon enough, she was locked inside a room. In this room, there was 1 door and 3 light switches next to it. Behind the door, there was an empty closet with nothing but a light bulb. Her task was to figure out which switch controlled the light bulb inside the closet. She could flip the switches however she wanted, but once she opened the door, she couldn't touch the switches anymore. Sometime later, she managed to get it right. How did Carol do it? Okay, let's go step by step. She flipped switch number 1, then waited for a few minutes. Then, she flipped it back to off and immediately flipped switch number 2. Then, she opened the door and checked the light. It was turned off. So she realized it wasn't switch number 2 that controlled the light. She decided to touch the bulb to test if it was hot or cold. If the bulb was cold, it would mean that switch number 3 controlled it. But the bulb was hot. So that meant that switch number 1 controlled it. Way to go, Carol! To get back to the party, Carol had to solve another riddle. There were 2 hourglasses in front of her. One hourglass measured 7 minutes, and the other measured 4 minutes. She needed to time 9 minutes using both hourglasses. How could she do it? First, she turned over both hourglasses at the same time. By the time the 4-minute hourglass was done, the other one still had 3 minutes left. Carol flipped the 4-minute hourglass over again. By the time the 7-minute hourglass was empty, there was 1 minute left on the other hourglass. And by the time the 4-minute hourglass emptied again, there was 1 minute's worth of sand in the bottom half of the 7-minute timer. She flipped it over again, so there was 1 minute's worth of sand in the top part of the hourglass. And when the 7-minute timer finally emptied again, 9 minutes had passed in total. Phew, that took some work. Someone stole a rare diamond from Mrs. Monica Fraser's house. Mrs. Fraser claimed she'd walked into her bedroom one morning and found that the glass box in her dressing room had been broken and the diamond had been gone. She called a detective, who soon arrived at her place and asked some questions. Based on his inquiries, he gathered 3 suspects. Mrs. Fraser's gardener, Steve, had the key to the house. Her cousin Sophia was staying with her for the week, and the cleaning lady Adeline cleaned the house every day. Steve said he was on holiday that week, so he wasn't anywhere near the house when it had happened. Sophia said she didn't even know her cousin had a diamond hidden in her house. And Adeline said that she'd been cleaning the house at around 10 p.m. the previous night. Everything had seemed all right. Who stole the jewelry? It was the cleaning lady. It seems that right after she broke the glass and stole the diamond, she also wiped off the pieces of glass left on the floor. On a cold winter day, Jason woke up after a medical procedure. He was lying in bed when the doctor walked into his room, saying there were 3 women outside claiming to be his wife. All 3 of them wanted to see Jason, but only his wife was allowed to do so. Look at the women. Which one do you think is telling the truth? The woman wearing a white shirt is the only one that has a ring on her left finger. She's the wife. It was a lazy Sunday morning, and John was having breakfast in the kitchen. Suddenly, he heard glass shattering. He walked into the living room and saw that someone had just broken one of his windows. He was mad and decided to go outside to see if he could find the culprit. There were only 3 people in the street, so he talked to each of them. The first was one of his neighbor's children. He was coming back from his football practice, holding a ball in his hands. He said he'd been going home at the time of the incident. The second person was Stephen, John's neighbor and longtime friend. He was carrying a toolbox. The man said he decided to come home to fix John's window. The last person was Julio, a mailman. He was riding his bike, throwing newspapers on people's front lawns. He said it had been hours since he'd passed John's house. Soon enough, John figured out who had done it. How? It was the mailman. If you look at the lawn, the newspaper is lying on the grass beneath the window. He threw the newspaper towards the mailbox, but missed it, and it hit John's window. Whoops. It was a stormy night. Kate and her boyfriend stayed up late watching a soap opera. In the middle of it, there was a weather forecast. The weather lady said it would keep raining for 2 more days, but in 72 hours, it'd be bright and sunny. Kate turned to her boyfriend and said that the weather lady was wrong, and the girl was right. Why? Because in 72 hours, it will also be nighttime, so it can't possibly be bright and sunny. It was Amelia's dream to go skydiving, but she was afraid of heights. One day, her friend took her to fulfill her dream. Amelia jumped from an airplane without a parachute and didn't get hurt. How is that possible? The plane wasn't flying, it was still on the ground. Duh. Dave, an archaeologist, traveled to Egypt on a very special mission. He spent days excavating ruins hidden under the sand, and the only thing he found was a coin marked 10 BCE. When he showed it to his colleagues, they told him the coin was a fake. Why? Well, because the designation BCE didn't appear until after the beginning of our era. It was raining when Mrs. Moore called the police. She said someone had just bumped into her car and driven away. When the police arrived, the only person next to the place of the incident was a man fixing his tire. Mrs. Moore said that that was the car that had bumped into hers. However, the gentleman said that it couldn't be true because he'd been busy fixing his car the whole time. Can you tell who's lying? It's the guy fixing his car. The rain started just recently. If he'd been fixing his car this whole time, the ground underneath it would be dry. But look, it's wet. This means he's just arrived there and is actually the one responsible for the incident. 4 friends decided to meet up for coffee one afternoon. Someone asked which one of them was the oldest, and they answered with a riddle. Mia is 3 times older than Anna, but 3 years ago, Anna was a year younger than Claudia is now, and Olivia is twice as old as Anna. So can you put the girls into order by age? The correct order is Mia, Olivia, Anna, and Claudia. Here's a quick one. What belongs to you, but others use it more often? Your name. Outside a fancy palace, 2 sentinels were guarding the main gate. They were standing, looking in different directions, one towards the west and the other towards the east. At some point, one of the sentinels asked the other, What are you smiling about? How could he know that his colleague was smiling? Well, despite the fact that they were looking in different directions, they weren't standing back to back. They were facing each other. Kevin was away on business and had to spend the night in a hotel. After a full day of meetings, he returned to his room to get some rest. He went to bed but couldn't fall asleep. After tossing and turning in bed for hours, he called someone, didn't say a word, and then finally fell asleep. Who did Kevin call? And how could he finally fall asleep? He called the room next door, as his neighbor was snoring very loudly. The ringing woke the neighbor up, the snoring stopped, and Kevin managed to doze off. You've just come back from a long vacation. There, you bought a new suitcase to store all the new things you got, but you don't remember the code. Luckily, you left yourself a note on your cell phone to help you decipher the code to open the lock. 682. One digit is right and in its place. 614. One digit is right but in the wrong place. 206. Two digits are right but both are in the wrong place. 768. All digits are wrong. 380. One digit is right, but in the wrong place. What's the three-digit code? Zero, 4, 2. Look at the photo. It seems like Adrian is in danger, and he can't even see what's about to happen. But lucky him, he survived, and just 2 minutes later, he was eating cotton candy. How is it possible? Adrian is at a zoological museum. Look closely. The tiger is behind thick glass, and it's not even moving at all. It's just a statue, so it was completely safe for Adrian to stand there. The police were chasing a criminal who had just robbed a little store in a city suburb. They'd been chasing his car for a while, but then the vehicle took an unexpected turn and won some time. The police followed it and a minute later arrived at a gas station. But there were two identical cars there. Which one of them is the criminal's car? It's this one. Look, the gas tank is on the opposite side, so the car is here not to get filled up, but to blend in. Max, a cute dog, was staying in a dog hotel while his family was on vacation in Greece. 2 weeks later, 3 men came to pick him up, all claiming to be his owner. Who do you think the real owner is? It must be this man. Look, he has Max's name tattooed on his arm. Look at this picture of people in a movie theater. Most of them are couples, but 2 visitors are twins, a brother and a sister. Can you tell which couple it is? It must be these 2. Look, they have similar white strands in their hair. It'd be too much of a coincidence for a couple. Mr. York was pushed out of a plane by his business competitor while no one was looking. Mr. York got some injuries but survived. How is it possible? Think outside the box to get it right. When it happened, the plane was still on the runway. Okay, let's have a little break now. I'll be showing you an emoji, and your task is to find the one that doesn't belong to the group. Ready? Here's the first one. What do you say? I'd say that this one doesn't belong here. All the others are blue. Okay, here's another set for you. Will you manage to find the one that doesn't belong here? All of them except for this one are sports equipment. Any ideas here? Yes, they're all summer related, but this one doesn't really fit in. And the last set for you. Will you manage to find the odd one? These are all real everyday objects, but this one is magical, so it's the odd one out. Belle and Chloe are twins. One year, Belle had her birthday on Friday.
Oh, yes.
Chloe celebrated her birthday 2 days later on Sunday. The guests who came to both parties didn't believe that twins could have birthdays 2 days apart, but the girls showed their IDs and explained everything. So, how is it possible? The twins were born at night. Belle was born right before midnight on February 28th, and Chloe was born right after midnight on March 1st. This year was a leap year, and February 29th came in between these dates. Inoni lives on a farm where she has horses, rabbits, and chickens. Here's what she says about her horses.
All of my horses except for 2 are black. Also, all of them except for 2 are brown. And all of them except for 2 are white.
How many horses does Inoni have, and what color are they? She has just 3 horses, 1 black, 1 brown, and 1 white. There was a diversity week at school, and one of the students was robbed. Detective Callum interrogated 3 main suspects. Eliza said she'd been working in the cafeteria the whole time. Asher pointed at one of the flags and said he'd been fixing it since it had been hanging upside down. Naya said that the student who had been robbed was her best friend, so she never would have done that. Who's guilty? Asher. The flag that was supposed to be hanging upside down is actually symmetrical. On a rainy day in the summer, a house in a small neighborhood was robbed while the owners were away. The police came to interrogate 4 neighbors. Everyone said that it had been raining. They'd been at home all day, eating and watching movies. Take a look at the houses. Who is lying? Reed is lying. Look, the ground under his car is wet, which means he arrived after it had started raining. So, he did leave his house. Miss Virginia Dell was a rich gentleman's daughter. She was staying at her hotel room when a security guard called her. He told her to run away since the criminal was going up to her room. Miss Dell ran to the elevators, but in each of them, there was a man. Which elevator is safe for her to use? The criminal obviously came from the first floor, and since this man is going down, it must be safe to go with him.
Really?
Dakota woke up in a dungeon. She couldn't remember what had happened. After wandering around for a while, she found out it was a vampire's castle guarded by the creature himself. Also, she found 3 chests. One of them was full of gold coins. Another was filled with silver coins. And the third chest was full of diamonds. Dakota could take any chest with her, but she wouldn't be able to get past the vampire anyways. What should the girl do? Dakota should take the chest with silver coins. Vampires are afraid of silver, so she'll be able to walk past him. Amelia is participating in a game show, and here is her last task. If she completes it, she'll win. She has cubes with these numbers. She should use 3 of them so that the sum total is equal to 30. Which ones should Amelia use? She should turn the cube with 9 over to get 6, and then use it along with 11 and 13. Sienna must leave the house in exactly 9 minutes. The power is off and her cell phone battery is flat. Sienna has 2 hourglasses. One measures 7 minutes and the other measures 4 minutes. How can she use them to measure exactly 9 minutes? Sienna should start both hourglasses at the same time. When the 4-minute hourglass runs out, she should start it again. 4 minutes will pass. When the 7 minutes hourglass runs out a bit later, she should start it again. It'll be 7 minutes. The 4-minute hourglass will run for 1 more minute together with the 7-minute one. When it runs out of sand, it'll be 8 minutes. Sienna should then flip over the 7-minute hourglass. It'll have sand in its top part for exactly 1 minute. Now, I'll be showing you some images, and your task is to find out what's wrong with them. Ready? Here's the first one. What do you think? This car has no steering wheel. Easy. What about this picture? Can you notice anything odd about it? The reflection in the mirror is different from reality. What about this picture? What's really off here? These people are playing soccer, but they're playing it with a basketball. What about this picture? Do you see any mistakes here? People are in open space, but they're not wearing spacesuits. They wouldn't be able to breathe without them. Some people went on a hot air balloon trip. Can you see what's wrong here? This is definitely not a hot air balloon. Take a very close look at this picture and try to find a mistake. Can you see it? Look, the door hinges are on the wrong side of the door. Look, it's very pretty, but something is off. Can you figure out what? Pay attention to the rainbow. The color arrangement is incorrect. What about this winter paradise? Do you see anything that doesn't belong here? The butterflies. There's no butterflies in the winter. Next one. This cool space picture. Do you see what's wrong with it? The astronauts are wearing spacesuits and they're on the surface of the moon. But look, there's another moon in the sky. It's not possible, and they should observe Earth instead. Can you notice any inconsistencies here? The label on the carton says that it's almond milk, but then why is a cow pictured on it too?